Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. I think we are getting into the real meat of why we are here this morning for the mining in Daba in Uganda. This session, as you heard, is a very interesting one. Exploration. I keep telling everyone who cares to listen that we may say we have so much of minerals, but by the time you talk of the Wagagais of this world, the Renzoris of this world, you do not know how patient and how long they've taken to engage in exploration. We may have Euromagnetic survey in Karamoja, but until you get serious players who sink expensive, hard-earned money into exploration, we will have no mineral sector. So we are privileged today to have people who will enlighten us about what it takes to really get into exploration in earnest until you prove that you have a measured, indicated mineral resource that you can call viable for purposes of putting up a mine. That is a long process that takes almost 10 years or over. But people who are not in this sector, whenever I'm talking with them, I'm shy to continue debating because I find that there is such a big difference of understanding. So, those of you who are here are fortunate. We are going to first listen to a keynote address by no other than the Chief Executive of Renzori Rare Metals, Warren Teragwasa. He hails from South Africa. He's a very experienced businessman. He's very knowledgeable, just not on in the mineral sector, but a corporate, in the whole corporate world, in the financial world, in management world, name it. We could never have been very fortunate to have him agree to come and address us. Take us through what it has taken you in Renzori Rare Metals to be where we are. Warren, you have the floor.
Now, I've been told I've got about 2 hours to make this presentation, so I hope you all make yourself comfortable. On that note, Honorable Minister, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to see you again, and it's like greeting an old friend. Senior officials of the ministry and the directorate, also thank you for making yourselves available today. Members of the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, honored guests, people who are watching online, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm, as Sir Rich pointed out, my name is Warren Tregertha. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Renzori Rare Metals. And I have the pleasure of talking to you today and to discuss the topic of developing a global rare earths mine. And there we go. Let's see if this works. And it does. So before we commence, I just need to give out the standard disclaimer, and that disclaimer says I'm not allowed to look into the future. My bosses have said I can't predict the future, so you can't believe anything I say. This is not financial advice, and basically anything I say cannot be used against me in a court of law. So having said that, let us proceed. But before I get into the main topic of developing a global rare earths mine, thank you. Developing a global, I think it would be useful for those of you who don't know me, and I must apologize to certainly the ministry and the directorate. Unfortunately, you know most of this stuff already, but for the rest of you, just a quick overview of who we are as Renzori. So, I'm not sure if you can see, but there we are, the orange bit. That's effectively what Renzori is. It's called our Makutu Rare Earth Project. we are an exploration mine currently moving towards mine development. Technically, we are a long-life, large ionic absorption clay deposit. So those of you who look up and look into rare earths, you'll notice that there are two types. There's hard rock, and hard rock generally has radioactivity, and ionic absorption clays, which does not have any radioactivity. So that is a good deposit to have. The picture doesn't really do it justice, but it's huge. The mineralization extends around 40 kilometers across, and it covers a surface area of around 300 square kilometers. As the Honorable Nankabira over there said, we're blessed to be close to the A109 highway, which is the Ginger Road that takes us all the way through to Mombasa. You can see there's close to the Simba Power Station in Ginger. We've also got a railway line running past. Importantly, Renzori Rare Metals is majority owned by our Australian brothers, Ionic Rare Earth Limited, and it's in large part thanks to them that we are able to be where we are today. And we are currently getting the mining lease application process underway, and we are looking forward to a positive result. I also forgot to mention that currently we have a JORC compliant resource of 532 million tons. That is huge. It means that we're going to be around for a very long time, and it's important that we get this right. So yes, we're a rare earth mine, but just quickly, for those of you who don't know, what are rare earths and why are they important? So I'm not sure who of you did science at school, but that's the periodic table of elements. And rare earth elements are those 15 orange ones along the bottom. They're called lanthanides. So it's the 15 lanthanides plus scandium plus yttrium. And in general, rare earths are important because they're considered transformational, because they make ordinary metals perform with abilities way beyond their natural capacity. So it's a bit like Popeye's spinach. I don't know if you know who Popeye is, but when he has a can of spinach, he becomes superhuman. Rare earth elements do exactly the same thing to metals. We're quite fortunate at Makutu because our basket comprises 44% of the heavy rare earths, which are highly valuable, as well as 43% of the magnet rare earths, and I'll elaborate a bit more on that a bit further. The nice thing is people like North Korea, China, Russia, the USA are driving geopolitical tensions, and people are suddenly becoming aware that they need a secure alternative source of rare earth supply. So that positions us quite nicely because we are one of the few ionic absorption clay deposits outside of China, and that makes us of real interest to the rest of the world. So fundamentally, and it's said at the bottom, the rare earth elements are fundamental inputs of the green economy of tomorrow because they are used in many of the green applications. Just to give you a sense of what applications are, I've just given you a quick example up there. So there we have electric vehicles. Everyone hears about these electric vehicles, but for us, rare earths are used quite commonly in the actual drive motors, the electric supercharger, and the generators, as well as the air conditioners and the electric windows. But they are used extensively in all the new electric vehicles that are due to come out. I'm not sure if anyone knows about offshore wind turbines, but they're wind turbines, but they're huge. So they're about 120-meter blades. They stand 150 meters at the hub. So from the ground to the very top of the highest blade, it's 270 meters. And each one of those offshore wind turbines takes about 1,700 kilograms of rare earth material. So it's 1.7 tons per wind turbine that gets used. I want you just to draw your attention to the top right-hand corner over there. That is a listing of countries that are going to ban internal combustion engines and their dates. So the first one is Norway, 2025. In 2030, we've got the rest of Scandinavia, plus Denmark, plus Europe, plus the Netherlands, plus Slovenia. Then in 2040, we'll have France and Spain. And then in 2050, we'll have Japan. I think Japan doesn't want to ban internal combustion engines because I think they want to continue selling Toyotas to Uganda. So that's just my... There are some applications where rare earths cannot simply be substituted. So basically, if you want to build more of these, you have to get new supply. So there on the left is the MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, and that's used for brain scans effectively and assessing different body parts. Then we have the positron emission tomography, or PET scanner. I didn't make that up, that is a real thing, and it analyzes metabolic functions in the human body. And you need lutetium for that. We have what we call permanent magnets, so it's samarium cobalt or neodymium iron boron magnets. And they're used in things that we use all the time. So those fancy Bose speakers, in microwave communications, basically in all applications that makes things like these more powerful and smaller. Another recent development is what we call EDFA, which is erbium-doped fiber amplifiers. So I wasn't aware, but long-distance fiber communications needs a booster, and that's what that does. And it gives you 5G on steroids. Now, I thought 5G was communication on steroids, but this is now going to make it faster, and it's believed that all long-distance communication will require EDFAs. So it's pretty exciting. And finally, there is a hard edge to rare earths. They're used in crucial defense applications. I just thought I'd highlight some of them over here. The US fighter jet, the F-35, it travels at speeds of up to 2,000 kilometers an hour, and that uses about 400 kilograms of rare earths. The Ashley Burke, these are the US Navy destroyers, the most powerful destroyer boats in the US Navy. They use about 2,350 kilograms of rare earths. And then the nuclear-powered subs, the Virginia S-class submarine, that uses also about 4,000 kilograms. So 4 tons of rare earths. And the nice thing is that our little basket, our small operation out in Makutu, has most of the rare earths that all the applications I mentioned before require. Okay, so now we know a little bit about us, Renzori. We know a bit about rare earths and how they're used. And now we can go into what is required and what it takes to develop a global rare earths mine. So without further ado, there we go. So in order to develop a global rare earths mine, apart from licensed applications and apart from great people who we have at Makuta and Renzori, we need resource grade size. We need a social license to operate. We need to know how to mine and extract those minerals. We need financing. We need offtake. We need country and a good legislative environment. And we need infrastructure. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my speech. Thank you very much. No, just. If only it were that simple. So I'll give us all just a quick flavor of what has gone into those various points, certainly from our perspective as Renzori Rare Metals, and to give a sense of the journey we've come from and to really impress upon you all what it really takes to develop a global rare earth mine. So let's start at the beginning. You first need an ore body, and there we are. So as I mentioned before, we've got a JORC-compliant resource of 532 million tons. Technically, it's 650 parts per million at a cut-off grade of 200 parts per million of total rare earths less cerium. I think what it really means that for every 1 million kilograms of ore we process, we'll get 650 kilograms out. So it's minute quantities. So for every 1,000 tons we process, we'll get 650 kilograms out. That is a lot of ore that we have to move. It was discovered when the government flew radiometric airborne surveys back in 2011, and some of our very clever Ugandan partners discovered the anomaly, and the rest, as they say, is history. And we've gone from strength to strength. In order to establish whether the resource is there and what's under the ground, we have drilled, the entire Makuta deposit has enjoyed 15,000 meters of drilling. That's 15 kilometers of drilling. And every single meter has been recorded and logged for things I mentioned at the bottom, for moisture, color, rock type, veining. And knowing some of our geologists, they probably even marked what the rocks tasted like. But that's up to them. So you can see that a lot of work just to establish whether you have a resource body has gone into this. Just on the side there's an example of how we record the logs. There's about 9 meters of core, and every single meter has been documented. And we've got loads and loads and loads of trays just like that in storage. And after all that effort, you get to draw pretty graphs like this one. And this is a cross-section of our deposit, and you can get to see the various layers of clays within the clay. So we have a hard cap layer, we've got clay, we've got upper saprolite, lower saprolite, and then you've got the sort of fresh rock, as they call it, and we know it's siltstone, mudstone at the bottom. But there, all that effort, and you can see at each layer, each hole that was drilled to support this, what is strictly called a regolith graph. So there we know what's sitting there. You see we're facing north, and there's west and east on either side. And we can do that for virtually all of the ore body. So it's not enough just to have rocks as your ore body. You need to have the right type of rocks. And these are the further tests, geological and metallurgical, that the deposit has overgone. And I've just listed them down. So we've had 1,206 bulk density tests. We've tested 125 samples for multi-element whole rock analysis. We've done 32 samples for just mapping different types of clay. On the metallurgical side, we've sent samples off to universities for analysis and testing. We've done initial tests before we did the main test. We've done 600 bottle roll tests. And just to really impress upon you, I just want you to think about a bottle roll test. So what happens is we extract a sample, we send it to the lab for analysis. That sample is then prepared and analyzed. So you've got to describe what's going into the process. Then you mix it with a leaching agent or a lixiviant, as they refer to it. And then they shake it in a test tube or roll the bottle, hence the name. And then they've got to wait. Then the results of the test are recorded and documented. And that whole process is just one test. So if you imagine one person working 365 days of the year, 600 bottle roll tests will take that one individual a year and 8 months if he works weekends as well. So when you look at the amount of work in here, I want you, every time you see 600, I want you to add a day to it, just to get a sense of the amount of work that's gone into the metallurgical and geological analysis to establish the resource that we have publicized to the market. So, in summary, geology, which is the rocks and the layers, plus the grades, which is the amount available, plus the metallurgy, whether you can actually get access to the material that you want, equals your resource body. So far, so good. So now we've got a resource. Now we mine it. Now, with rare earths, the mining procedure is not it's not as clear cut, and there's still a lot of things that we need to work out. But in short, I've just got a little pictorial representation of where we will be heading when we're into commercial production. So once we've removed topsoil, the ore body will be dug out, and it'll be taken across to those big drum-looking things over there, which are called agglomerators. And agglomerators churn up the clay to make it more permeable for leaching and treatment. Then once it's been agglomerated, you can see at the bottom there, down there, I don't know if you can see it, but it's stacked for treatment. And that funny looking thing there is called a grasshopper. And then irrigation pipes are laid over the heap. And the leaching agent, which is ammonium sulfate, which is fertilizer to you and me, comes out, it's collected. Then that, what they call pregnant leach solution, so it's full of rare earths, and that's what they call it, is then run through nanofiltration and reverse osmosis treatment to collect all the rare earths and clean up the water. And thereafter, the rare earths are dried, bagged, and ready for shipment. Okay? And that looks wonderful. So in our plans, at peak production, okay, assuming we're at peak production, we intend to process 5 million tons of ore per annum. That's excluding removing any topsoil. That's excluding putting the ore back into the ground after we've treated it. That's roughly 3,000 tons of ore per day, which is around 570 tons an hour. So to get it in your head, you're looking at a 40-ton truck driving past every 4 minutes. Or with the additional topsoil and rehabilitation processes, probably a truck every 1 to 2 minutes. That is a seriously significant operation. And that's where we intend to go. And that's fine, but we're going to start small, you know. So just like if you were given your father's Ferrari to drive around the latest racetrack, I think before you start screaming around the track, you would probably want to see what the track is like, and you would probably want to drive around on a boda, or maybe drive around in the Toyota Corolla first, before you jump into the Ferrari and go screaming around the racetrack. So we're going to start small, because we know that to construct commercial operations is going to take roughly around 18 months. So in that time, we're going to construct a demonstration plant, which will take 6 months. And there we will make sure that everything we plan to do at industrial scale works. And it's exactly the same process, but just slightly smaller. And there you can see we'll have less of a operation, and it's smaller, but will still be significant. We'll still have an on-site lab. We'll still do everything we need to do. But it's just to make sure that when we do go full steam ahead, we know exactly what we are dealing with and what we can expect. Another key aspect to developing a global mine is infrastructure. And Honourable, you touched upon it early on, and this, I'm very pleased to say, we had absolutely nothing to do with. We are very fortunate where we are in Makutu. We're right next to the hydroelectric power station. We've got good roads on the A109. It's tarred roads. We've got railway infrastructure. We've got telecommunications infrastructure. We've got access to water, and we've got access to industrial centers around Jinja and Kampala. So from that point of view, we're very grateful to say that there's nothing that prevents us from an infrastructural point of view, and that's a real credit to the country, and we're truly grateful. But that's one of the major hurdles that many global mining companies have to overcome, because often mining is in these remote areas, and fortunately for us, we're in the heartland of the Basoga region. Right. One of the other things is offtake, and basically you've got to sell your product to someone. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but all roads with regards to rare earth lead to China, and because we are a heavy rare earth company, which we will be, all of the rare earth processing capabilities reside in China. So the orange stuff is what we call light rare earths, and we have a large proportion of heavy rare earths, so that's where our focus be. And our partners and business partners, we're working together to produce or to provide a non-Chinese source of supply to the West. You'll notice the US doesn't have any capabilities, Europe doesn't have any capabilities, and that's something we'll be working on to develop in the future. Now, one of the other aspects, and we've touched upon it, is the issue of country tenure and risk. Now, I've put this up here just to give the audience here a sense of how the international investment community looks at the world, and Africa in particular. And I'm sad to say some of them don't have an appreciation for Africa, and they do it by colors and maps. So there we can look at the 2019 African risk map, and this is for political risk. You can see that Uganda is considered moderate, just like Tanzania, Zambia, South Africa, where I'm from, also moderate risk. But you'll notice that there are other risk maps out there which the investment community use, and there's one on the left, and I see that they've merged Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. So they don't see it as three separate countries, they just see it as one blob in the east. And this is something that I'm not sure many people appreciate, is that when we go out and engage international investors, this is the type of thing we have to deal with. I'll give you another example. There's a survey called the Fraser Institute Annual Survey, and what it does is it ranks countries according to investment attractiveness, and it looks at things like the legislative environment, the political environment, and the willingness of big companies to commit money to those countries. So I just thought I'd put it up for interest's sake, and you can see the top 5 mining jurisdictions in the world: the United States, Canada, Australia, Finland, and Botswana. So these are areas that investors are most likely to put their money. In the bottom of the world, we've got Venezuela, which is at the very bottom, then Argentina, then Tanzania, then Spain, and Bolivia. So of those countries attracting mining investment, those are the least favorable. So then I thought, well, let's look at Africa. And I've done the whole list of Africa, and you can see everything from Botswana, Mali, all the way down to Tanzania. Now, what some of you will realize, that Uganda's not on the list. So I'm very sad to tell you all that we do not exist, and none of us are here. So according to the Fraser Institute, which is clearly not right, because we are here. So what is this saying? This ranking is effectively saying that Uganda has not attracted sufficient mining investment yet to even be put on the list. So there might be a couple of reasons there, and one of them might be simply because the investment community doesn't know about Uganda, and that's true. It might be because there's some concern about the political environment. It might even be concern about the legislative environment, and maybe it's the new Mining Act. But what I think is we, as Ionic and Rwenzori Rare Earths, are actually going out there, and we're waving the flag, and we're telling everybody that Uganda is a good place to invest. And when we get this right, and we will get it right, Minister, when we get this right, we're going to be on the list. And when we get it right, more people will come, and then we can start moving up and down this list to become the premier destination for mining investment in Africa. But I just wanted to impress upon you all that there's an international community out there, and they don't apply their minds. They just look at data, charts, and tables. And that's the environment you need to overcome when developing a global mine. Now, coupled with the previous slide, and hand in glove with this, just to give you a sense, this is how much money we're going to need to develop our project. We'll need roughly about $130 to $150 million for capital equipment. We're going to need around $60 to $80 million for working capital, petrol, things like that, diesel. And we're looking at about a total of, say, $200 to $230 million. And where do we get it? Contrary to popular belief, exploration companies like ourselves do not sit on piles of cash waiting for opportunities to jump out. And my chairman once said that he doesn't have a magic wand. And we have to do what everyone else does. We have to go out and ask for it. So the various places where we've gone to is the stock market. And the stock market are individual investors like you and I, and they go buy shares and they give their money to the company. When you need larger chunks of money like we do, we go to institutional investors, and these are the hedge funds, these are the investment funds, these are the larger investment. But they do things just like I described earlier, they do things by mandate. And basically they say, I know Uganda, I love Uganda, but Uganda is on a moderate political level, and we have to invest in countries that have a low political level. Or we can only invest in countries that have a 70% ranking on the Fraser Institute. So it's not that they don't want to, it's that their mandates, the rules which govern their fund deployment, prevent them. So that is a big stumbling block for anybody who doesn't understand that these people are almost investing by a checklist, and we have to meet those checklists, and we have to impress upon them just exactly what they're doing. There are other sources of finance, so obviously they're banks, but it's like that old saying goes, you have to prove to a bank that you don't need their money before they'll give you their money. And my apologies to the banking sponsors here today, but that's one of the things we have to deal with. Not only that, but the banks adhere, as much do the institutional investors, to international and global standards. So if we're going to be taking their money, we also have to adhere to the global standards to which they want us to adhere to. And those are some of the conditions on which that money is given over. And then lastly, there's your trade partners, which are also good sources of finance, but those usually only come into play when there's product available. And it's once you've got product available, often the need for trade partner financing falls away, and you generally use it for expansion. So that's where one gets their money from, or needs to get their money from, to develop the mine. All right. And possibly the most important aspect of what we do is this term social license to operate. And basically what that means is your stakeholders, the people and the communities within your work, their acceptance of you and your business practices in the area. And the way we have done this, and the way all global mining companies should do it, is through constant engagement. I know my team, and I'm very proud to say this, have engaged everybody right from the ministry, and the Honourable Ruth has come all the way down to Makutu on the ground and all the way back up again. We've had engagements with the Prime Minister. We've had engagements with the Directorate, and they've given us feedback and support. We've engaged area MPs. We've had close workshops with them. We've gone through, we've discussed the issues. We've had numerous district leadership meetings, COWs, LC5s, RDCs, local leadership meetings, LC3s, LC1s, local chiefs, parish councillors. We've also got CLOs, which is community liaison officers, in each of the main areas in which we operate, just to communicate what we're doing on the ground, as well as to take back the feedback of what's happening on the ground. We've worked closely with the Busoga Kingdom, because the Makutu project is squarely within the Busoga region, and the Chabazinga, which is the chief, the king of the Busoga, has commissioned a task force to engage us so that we can work closely with them. Coupled with that, we've also worked with the government department, which is NEMA, which is the National Environmental Management Authority. And we've had public engagements, and just to give some highlights, at the last two public engagements we had 3,800 registered attendees. I'm sure there was more, but a lot of them simply did not register. But that is a significant turnout, not to mention the 65,000 followers on Twitter that we had for those engagements. In addition to that, we've been having rolling radio shows in the community and in the area so that people know what we're doing. And it's also to clarify any misunderstandings and to elevate people's concerns. And that is what we have done to make sure that we have legitimacy to operate in the area. And I'm very proud of my team, and that's something we will continue to do as the project develops. As part of the social license, we also need to walk the talk. So we've also been doing some community initiatives and helping where we can and within our budget constraints. So we've done things like servicing the community bores, because some of them weren't working, or some of them weren't drawing any water at all. we've renovated the police posts in Bawaya. There's the resource office. We renovated in the Bugweri district. We've donated footballs to primary schools. We've donated trees to the Mayuge as part of the Water Environment Week. We're sponsoring a PhD student at the Australian National University in Australia, and we're supporting a PhD student at the University of Cape Town. And this is all part of the broader community engagement that we've been undertaking. And it speaks to one of our values, which is developing a prosperous and safe and healthy future for our Makutu project. One of the other things, the social license to operate also involves the international community, and with that, it's our main, our majority investor, Ionic Rare Earths, is now a member of the United Nations Global Compact. When I first read that slide, it says using the unsustainable development goals to measure impact, but it's actually just the UN Sustainable Development Goals to measure impact. So that's why I made it blue. But they are the measures that the World Bank and the rest of the world look at. It's around traceability of supply. It's about honoring the environment in which you work. And all those World Bank, IFC development goals hinge around the 4 pillars, which are essentially human rights, labor rights, environmental protection, and anti-corruption. And so when we mention that we go and speak to international investors, these mystical international investors, these are the standards that we are being held to. And as a result, these are the standards that we're going to employ in our company practices down at the Makutu project and within Rwenzori. So it's more just to be aware that we operate in a broader social license to operate, even as well as community issues on the ground. So, what does it take to build a global rare earth mine? And it's a bit like the story of the religious, the very devout man, and he was a good man. And one day, maybe because of global warming, the rains came in and there was flooding. And a neighbor walked past him and said, "Oh, my good friend, here's a life jacket. This water's getting high. Take it." He says, No. The Almighty is going to save me. Never mind. And then the flood waters rose a bit more, and he actually had to climb onto his roof. And another friend came by in a boat. He says, "My brother, jump into the boat. I can save you." He says, No, it's all right, you go. The Almighty is going to save me. And eventually, the water levels rose high, and he was sitting on his chimney. And a guy in a helicopter came, and he said, "Jump on the ladder, I'll save you." He says, "No, it's okay, you go. The Almighty will save me." And I'm sad to say that poor man, he drowned, and he died. But because he was a good man, he went to heaven's gates, and he went to the Almighty, and the Almighty looked at this man. He says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "My Lord, unfortunately, I drowned. Why didn't you save me?" And he says, "But I sent you a life jacket. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. You've got to work with me here." And that's a bit what we're doing here on the project. We've got all the opportunity, and it's not just going to happen by itself. We have to work together, government, private, and the community at large, to make this and all the other opportunities happen within Uganda. So, in summary, what does it take? Firstly, I think what everyone possibly realizes now is that to develop a mine is not a quick process. All right? They don't just appear overnight. And generally, on average, global mines take around 10 years from start to finish to be operational. And we're very much within that time frame. So I know that the communities we engage, they're always saying, hurry up. When are you going to start mining? Unfortunately, if you look at the work that's gone into it, you can get a sense of why things take so long. We're certainly working together with the Ugandan government to develop Uganda's mining industry. And I'm sure the new legislation is going to work because we're going to make it work. We're going to work together as partners to see the way forward. And we take this responsibility of being proponents, advertisers, cheerleaders for the Ugandan economy very seriously. because it affects us all. It's quite clear that given the size of the resource, we're going to be around for a very, very, very long time. So probably longer than 50 years. So I'm probably not going to be here, unless I'm a devout man and I get into the boat. But it's going to be for all of us to set the project up right so that it can continue for many years into the future. What is also clear is that in the new and modern world, only the highest level of commitment to ESG standards is acceptable. And that means we're into slow, deliberate, responsible development. I'd also like to, at this point, extend my heartfelt gratitude to the ministry and your team. It's been really encouraging working with the Ugandan government. They've been supportive and have been a listening ear, and when required, have come to remove bottlenecks where they've been there. So thank you very much for that. It's much appreciated. Yeah, also I'd like to extend our gratitude to the leaders in the communities in which we've been working. They've made us feel very welcome. They've also been quick to point out where we have not done our part, but it's been done in the right spirit, and it's been constructive, and we are so grateful that we're working in such a good area, and we'd also like to say thank you to the people on the ground for their support. We're very, very grateful for allowing us in your area. And lastly, we're out there telling people that Uganda is a good place to invest, and we must all remember as we move forward that the world is watching, and they're going to see the next global rare earth mine emerge from Uganda, and I look forward to that. Thank you all for your time. I very much appreciate it.